You guys, this is honestly, I'm more excited about this podcast than any podcast so far in 2025 because I feel like this is about to get so juicy. So imagine like someone that has had the inner scene of all of the tea, the dating life, like leading up to meeting and falling in love with Keith, the drama, the insights into like what's going on with astrology. So I brought one of my really close friends onto the podcast today, and we are going to talk about we're in a Venus retrograde, you said?
Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde.
Great. Okay. Welcome to the podcast, Mahek.
Thanks for having me.
I'm like already blushing. I'm like, oh God, this is gonna get so real. I'm so excited. And as much as like my professional life is so about Legend AI right now, the DMs that I get all the time are like talking about love. So obviously this is such a relevant topic.
It's
And
my favorite topic.
talk about this shit. It's so good. Okay, so let's talk about our love story.
How we met.
Yes.
So I was following you. I remember actually the first story of yours that I watched. I think Catherine Zinkina posted it, and I went on your profile, clicked on your story, and you were talking about investing that day. You're like talking about crypto and investing, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to know about this stuff. So I followed you. So I'd been following you for a while. And then I just knew I had to get out of Chicago. I was living in Chicago at the time. That's where I'm from. And at that time, was dating someone. We were touring different cities. And Florida just kept coming up in my mind. And I was like, I think I want to go to Florida. Anyways, we broke up and I was like, perfect. I'm going to go to Florida. So I went to go visit my friend in Miami, loved it, decided that Fort Lauderdale place. I remember also seeing some of your stories where you would be scootering around in like this very luscious area. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks like paradise. I want to go here. Because it also reminded me of Bali, which I loved. And I was like, I want that vibe, but in America. So checked it out, loved it. And then I think like 2 or 3 weeks after moving here, I bumped into you at a cafe. And then you connected you connected me with Mel, and then we kind of things just went on from there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh my God. So yeah, you made me an official influencer. You like actually moved states.
Literally.
Okay, so I have so much to say about this. You guys, I've only run into people that have known me just from the internet like 3 times ever, and I only look like a level 12 wreck when that happens. It's like, I'm literally like one time I was so hungover. I'm like, are you kidding me, God? Is this happening right now? And then I was definitely like fresh workout, like disgusting.
Yeah.
Anyways, and then like you and I,
Because when I went back into the coffee shop, because I came out, I thought I saw you, said hi to you, went back in, and then there was a guy's number on my laptop. Someone had left their number to me. It's like, oh, hello. I didn't know who it was. I didn't end up, hitting them up, but it was funny.
okay, so you and I met. You came over to my house the very first time on New Year's Eve. I remember you saying something to me, like we all went upstairs for something, and you said something about how dirty my bathroom was, and I was like, this one tells the truth.
I had a light bulb moment because you are a Virgo, okay? And I have so many Virgo friends that are like dirty, not like dirty, but like not organized. I had a light bulb moment, like, oh wait, like you're organized in different ways, like you're a healer, but not in the outer organized way. So, anyways, I just like had to make that comment out loud. There's no filter here. I'm just gonna say how I feel.
There is none. You either love that or you hate that, but it is like one of the things, it's one of the most endearing things about you because you're a fucking truth teller. I took Mahek with me to, I won't say which one, to like a pretty significant podcast interview. And she was like, you are way better than the, like, the
I
person.
was like, I have notes for him. And mind you, he has like a eight, I don't know, figure business and like, this very successful podcast. And I was like, I really think he could use these improvements and he would do a lot better.
She's like giving him improvements, but she's like, you're going to be a star. And I was like, this is why I brought you.
I mean, you were.
Oh my God. Okay. So that was the day on the way home we like planned marrying God too. So let's talk about this story. Remember how we were going to buy a retreat center and we were going to have women come so they could have
We
ceremony.
would have marriage ceremonies.
Oh God, this is getting it. Okay, so Mahek was the friend. So if you guys have heard me tell the story about like me dating God and I was talking to my friend and we were both like we both got hung up on the same exact chapter. We're like, what is this? So the book specifically is called Inspire His Devotion. That was the book that we're reading on masculine and feminine polarity. And we both got hung up. I think we both forgot the fact that like the first four chapters were all about like he's rubbing your feet. He's totally in like devotion to your nervous system. And then it got to the chapter where it said like, and you ask him permission for anything. And we're both like, the fuck?
Did you?
I remember messaging you and I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to reflect. Is this my truth or my trauma?
Yeah. It was a
And
hard pill. I was like, I don't know how I feel right now. This is really uncomfortable.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
you
that
said you're
happened like many times throughout reading that book.
yeah. Yeah, you said you were talking to one of your guy coworkers about it, and I remember thinking, like, the only way that I could ever see this happening, because I'm like, I don't even believe that there's a man on earth like that. I'm like, the ego just gets too in the way. Then I asked, is this my truth or my trauma? And then I was like, the only way I could imagine this is if I were dating an egoless deity. And then we came up with the whole dating God experiment that same fucking day.
Yeah.
And then you manifested mashed potatoes. Do you want to tell that story?
Well, the whole thing that you just said right there was really important. If you were dating an egoless deity, and that in itself is like literally what differentiates dating a masculine person versus not. It's like they've gone through the ego deaths, the spiritual awakening, and all of that to become from this, like to come from this place of when they are asking you or when they are leading you or whatever else, it's not coming from this
Right.
ego side, but devotion and divinity. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know the difference because you like remember the first time Keith asked me to feed him? This was
I think
like
that's the story.
you remember me telling you that? It was like 2 or 3 weeks into our relationship. We were like sitting there eating pasta on the balcony. It was like such a beautiful night, like really romantic date, so hot. And then he's like, feed me every bite. And I was just like, okay. Like in my head, I was just like trying to be good with it, but it triggered something inside of me. But I knew that that was coming from me from fear. So I like made myself feed him he had no idea I was like a war was being waged on the inside for me. And I just fed him every bite, and it felt like every bite I was like breaking down a wall of my heart of like, he can't tell me what to do. He wants me to just like do everything for him and be his slave, and like all of this crazy shit that was going through my head while I'm remembering that this man has been like so generous and like at that point where we weren't saying things like love yet. So it definitely was like 2 weeks in because I knew at 3 weeks and 5 days I loved that man. But I remember it feeling so hard, but it was such a beautiful, it was a moment of devotion for me, whether it was for him or for my future person, because I didn't know that yet for sure. But it was so, I knew that I needed to move through the fear of it's okay to give that much, because I think historically, like if I gave too much, I like lost myself. It became like a self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so I was learning the difference between self-sacrifice and complete devotion. Now I would feed that man all day long if he wanted me to, and it would feel like I'm being fed. And like that's the difference when you are coming from a place of devotion. Tell us about what's happening right now astrologically. I know this isn't your professional career, but you are quite a little mystic.
I'm an Aquarius, and most Aquarians are just astrologically inclined and obsessed. So right now we've got 2 retrogrades happening. We have Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde, and we also just came out of a bunch of retrogrades. Uranus was in retrograde, Mars, etc. So Venus is the planet of love, art, beauty. When she's in retrogrades, it can bring back past into the present. So past relationships, toxic kind of cycles that you can get into, patterns that you may have from childhood or ancestral, or things that you saw growing up in your family, things that are kind of underneath the surface, subconscious things that might be underneath the surface, in terms of like how you show up in relationships and what kind of things that you kind of find yourself in. So all of that is in focus right now. And then at the same time, Mercury went into retrograde, which is the planet of communication. So, on top of all of that, communication is also a little bit more difficult, or I would say the opportunity to really refine how you communicate your message, how you come across. And especially with this Mercury retrograde, the themes of patience is really key. And also like not betraying yourself. So any place that you might not be speaking your full truth, your full being fully authentic, that will really be under the microscope.
I
So
literally just put a post up about self-betrayal like 5
really, yeah,
minutes ago.
you're so attuned. You're so attuned to the energy.
Okay, so we have had some initiations in the dating.
Hmm.
Wait,
Yeah.
I have a question
This
about,
was very different than mine.
tell me, was it? We'll see. Um,
Had the same lesson, but I think I came to a different conclusion than you, where you said, am I doing this out of devotion, or am I betraying myself? And I think we just came to different conclusions there in
okay.
relationships.
I do have a question about what you think about Mercury when it's in retrograde. And I wonder, I've never had this thought before, so I'm curious what you think. I do wonder, is it that Mercury like scrambles communications or a little bit, or is it that it highlights where you already weren't clear?
Definitely the second, for sure. So it's any retrograde is an opportunity for growth and evolving. It's always an opportunity. So if you, especially depending on like what sign it's in, it'll be highlighting different things. So this thing of self-betrayal and whatnot, right now with all of the planetary positions, authenticity is such a big theme. And we know that because Pluto going into Aquarius, it is all about authenticity and
Yeah.
living from your truth. So, yeah, any place that you're not doing that. And then because it's at the same time, Venus is in retrograde, especially then when you're not doing that in intimate relationships. So, where you're not showing up for your full self as your full self, which I am a little bit guilty of, where I have shown up as like a version that this person may want to see, or parts of myself that they might be accepting or whatever. So
Yeah.
it'll definitely show and highlight stuff like that.
Okay, so give us some tea. Where have you done that?
Well, so we went on this experiment, and then you started dating someone in this experiment, and this was like a year ago, right? At the beginning of last year we
It
started
was
the experiment.
February 2024.
Yeah. And then soon I also attracted this very masculine guy. So in the sense that um very different from my previous relationships, definitely leadership, planning dates, taking initiative, getting out of the car to open the door, all of those cute little sweet things, bringing over 2 bouquets because one wasn't enough. So all of the sweet stuff that you kind of really want. And whenever I would be in those moments of, similar to you feeding Keith, where I would be like, okay, is this person leading me? What, like, let me look inside and see if I'm going against my trauma, or is this what I should be doing, kind of thing.
I mean, like, where was the self-betrayal?
So I think the difference was the self-betrayal, and that's where that came in, was in all situations or in any moments of disagreement, I wasn't my full authentic self. I didn't always speak my truth. And sometimes I would think that their truth was more important, or it was more of the truth versus mine wasn't, so I would doubt myself a lot. And I think that's where the difference lied, where it was less about the person and more about me feeling completely comfortable being authentic and speaking my truth.
Oh my gosh, I think the the biggest thing that I've learned in relationships, whether it's been platonic or romantic, has been about discernment and what I believe that I'm learning about myself. Because especially in those moments of like conflict, when you're a little overwhelmed, honestly, in pain, it can be really easy for certain things to slide in and be masked as truth, especially if somebody says it with intense authority.
Yes.
And growing up in a world where, anybody who said something that sounded certain, especially somebody that you cared for and respected, it could be really easy. And this is like a lot of the trauma that we undo from childhood. Is like somebody says something and they say it with authority, and we take that on as our ultimate truth and even identity.
Yeah.
And I used to be told when I was a kid, "You're so shy." People that I loved with authority were telling me about myself, and I believed it to be true. I'm not a shy person. I'm really introspective. I'm curious, but I can be quiet. I don't speak often, especially when there's a lot going on, unless I have something really impactful to say. Otherwise, I'm just absorbing, curious, and listening. But that was perceived and then taught to me as being shy. And I remember this one time in my marriage, my ex was really upset at me, and he's like, "You're this, you're that." And like, he was so upset. And I remember crying to the point that I was almost in like a catatonic state because I'm like, I can't believe I've been this awful. It was such a conflict of what I was being told about me. It was such a conflict of what I believed to be true about my identity, that because he said it with such authority and because I had such like deep love for him, and still do, like, this isn't about him at all. I think we all say shit when we're pissed. And I think like it was such a conflict of identity that I let that in as a belief about myself, and it fucking utterly wrecked me. And that was one
Yeah.
of the greatest lessons in that moment of discernment of, is this my truth or is this an experience that I'm witnessing? That was a tough one.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of where my lesson was going. So when it comes to like you and Keith, then how do you, like, is there a specific example, or more insight into like how you're discerning on like what is truth? Where do maybe you have to self-reflect, or maybe where he might need to understand that you are just on this side and that's what your truth is?
It's interesting because as soon as I abandoned self-betrayal, I attracted a man that never tested me for it anymore. And we don't fight in that way. We
Mm,
don't say, "You're this, you did that." All we do is we come from like our personal experience, and here's what I'm feeling, and here's what I'm understanding, and here's what I'm seeing. And that doesn't mean that we don't have conflict. That doesn't mean that it's not hard. It means that we don't say identity statements about each other. Uh, I can't think of a single time where we ever have. And
wow.
there's been times where like he said to me, like, "It seems like you and I are just like completely understanding something different." And he's like, "And that's okay. And this is frustrating. But at the same time, like, your perception is this, my perception is this, and then the question is like, how do we restore harmony then? But I think I was tested so hard with my discernment, and my willingness to self-betray, especially right before I met him, was like the ultimate motherfucking test of all tests,
Yeah.
that once I held so strong. In fact, I remember a specific moment with like the person that I was dating before I met Keith, and he would say quite a few things that were not true about me, and his way of doing it was like he came for me. Like
Yeah.
almost like it was almost like a scared animal being suffocated in the way that he would like lash out. It almost felt like a lashing out through suffocation. And I remember I was like on the phone with him and I'm like, you just fucking can't talk to me that way. I was like, you want to know the truth? You want to talk about the truth? Sit down, shut the fuck up. And like, we're either going to go there or goodbye. And he was like, oh. And I think that was like don't get me wrong, there was so much more to the complexity to this relationship than I will even say. But, and for the record, like those were not exact words that I said because I honestly can't remember, but it would be akin to that. It would be akin to that posture, is really what I want to illustrate, of me saying, no, that's not it. I won't go there with you. Either you back off that or we're done. This conversation is over. And I meant it. Like, what's it called? Or people always say it, say it with your whole chest.
Yeah.
Like, I said it with my whole motherfucking chest. And that's the only time he would back down. And it was like my line in the sand moment with the universe of like, I will not fucking tolerate a man who will test me in this way because I know who I am.
Yeah.
And I never knew it more than after that man tested me so many times.
Yeah, because this relationship, it wasn't long. It was 4 months, but during
Yeah.
that period of time, there was so much like seesawing where he would say something about me that I knew was not truth. I was like, if you know me and if you could see my life through my eyes, you would see that this isn't true. And we would go back and forth, and like, he would say these things with such authority that I'm like, am I not seeing something? Am I being deluded? Like, am I keeping myself in a delusion? Like, what's happening here? Versus like, no, dude, this is my story. Like, this is my life. Like, how can you can't tell me about me more
Yeah.
than me?
Yeah. Oh my God, I had that same question. Wait, I like almost want to keep saying the same. Like, my experience was also 4 months. I'm like, wow, we really went through a fucking initiation. The parallels of our dating life has been wild.
So crazy. So crazy. I do feel like you get tested really hard, right before. But these, yeah.
Well, yes. And like, that's what I've been trying to say for a long time, is like the reason we keep getting less is because we keep saying yes to it. And I had drawn such a hard line in the sand about what I was available for in my dating life, especially once I clarified that I was looking to attract an actual partner again. And I was like, not just in like the fun, flirty dating season. Like, I loved that season. It was so fun. I got to see a piece of myself that I didn't know as this woman, because my previous dating life was when I was like 18. I'm like, whatever. She didn't know shit about the world. So it was fun to really discover myself as a woman in flirtatiousness, seduction, like who am I when I know who the fuck I am? And then also, it's funny as I look back, I'm like, I even remember I only had like 8-week relationships for the longest time. It would never last longer than
Yeah.
8 weeks. It always came back to like testing my standards. Like, are you willing to accept this? Are you
Yeah.
willing to accept this? And like the more that I said no, and I'm like, swipe, I can't. No. Remember this one guy, I said to him, I was like, how do you want to be communicated to in a non-monogamous relationship? And he's like, I don't want a non-monogamous relationship. And I was like, okay, it was nice knowing you. And he's like, wait, just kidding, I can do it. Like, I was,
Non-monogamous?
yeah, because I didn't want that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I didn't want that, but the universe would never let me actually truly date two guys at a time. Never. Like I wanted to so bad. Like, Sky Daddy was like, no,
No, no, you're not made for that. You only get one.
you're too much of a lover, bitch. Don't fucking fake it. Okay, so self-betrayal. You said you came to a different belief, outcome, lesson from this last relationship. Tell us what you landed on.
I just when I say different outcome, I just mean that for you, Keith is a person that has kind of done the work and is at where you're at. So
Mhm.
is in alignment with you, where I felt like I just realized through that experience that we're not in alignment. Although there might be things there, although there was polarity there, let's say that. Although there was polarity there wasn't alignment.
Right. And so I would say it had polarity, but it couldn't sustain it because there wasn't enough awareness at that time from both sides. And I think the hardest part, this is what I want to say earlier that I didn't want to miss. The hardest part for self reflective women is that we are willing to hear
Mm-hmm.
where we could improve.
100%.
And when we have that willingness, it can be easy to self betray. And this is where we're being fortified to have oh, I'm getting chills. Like to have rock solid fucking discernment about your life and who you are. And I've had to like express my strength and discernment about my knowingness, even within this relationship with Keith, when it comes to like what we say yes to. And, um, one of the things that I've learned is to like soften even more. And the thing that he's learned is actually to hold his posture of knowingness and what he wants because he was taught he has a Cancer rising, so it can be really easy to be taught and feel natural to be a people pleaser, and um it feels like you are doing something full of integrity almost. When you're
Mm-hmm.
people pleasing, it can be really misinterpreted as strength and integrity, especially like I'm a man of my word. I said I will do this and I will do this even if I have to self betray because I said I would. And like I think I've taught him a lot about self betrayal and he's taught me more than I could have ever possibly imagined about like receptivity and trust and safety. I know we were talking before about conscious masculine and feminine relationships and then masculine and feminine relationships. Like, what's the difference? How do you know? How do you even know if you are in one? And also we were also talking, I'm trying to remember our original conversation. We were also talking about like traditional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So traditional masculine, feminine, principles is that men need respect and women need love. It's just like that's like the basic principle.
Mhm.
And I had written that post that I don't think that that is enough. I think there needs to be some spiritual evolution to that. And that was my whole experience of I have another need, and that's to be completely authentic and to have the freedom to be myself. That is a non-negotiable. So I wanted to get like your thoughts on like now with your relationship with Keith, where do you kind of stand on the traditional polarity principles versus like what you actually think your relationship is kind of foundational on?
I think if we go back to instinctual polarity, which is what I loved about that book and the reason that I gave it a chance, even though it was a pretty controversial way of like having that conversation. The thing that I loved is like he is taking it from the perspective of there was a time in history when the language didn't exist and we were existing purely based off of instincts. And so if we look at us as instinctual beings first, and we look at how polarity is intended to create devotion in order to power longevity and lineage. True devotion that powers longevity and lineage leaves space for authenticity. Because if we aren't authentic, liberated, free beings that have like our gift is this like beautiful force of like water and creation and energy and emotion and it's complex and it's beautiful, and like their gift is like this like pillar and strength and posture that can just like create such a force, like and we power each other, right? Like my energy with his like building energy. I just think about like Keith and I, and like even just things that we've like created together already, just in our own relationship. I'm like, I've never felt stronger in my body, softer, more feminine, more free, more alive. I messaged him today. I'm like, I'm the most in love. I'm the most alive. I'm the freest I've ever been. I love you so much. We have so much to be grateful for. And that has only gotten stronger, and it has only created more depth, more safety, more um generational wealth is the word that's coming to me, like more generational wealth in all aspects. I believe will be impacted by like the true depth of devotion. And when there's devotion, there is no ego, so there would be no reason like for authenticity to ever be challenged.
Yeah. Because I think maybe devotion is the difference then, because I can, back in like when the industrial era and stuff happened and women were at home and bread makers and uh I mean bread makers as in literally making the bread, and then men were out there making money and then coming back home, and their wife had food on the table, dinner on the table, and taking care of the kids and stuff. They were still kind of like in their traditional roles. That was traditionally what they were doing. But the where I probably see the lack was, or that where things may have needed to be different or evolved, is the aspect of devotion, expression, freedom. Because if she's doing this out of responsibility rather than like feeling like I feel so filled and I
Yeah.
want to do this because it's an expression of myself,
Mhm.
that's kind of the difference there. Because I think we had it, and got lost along the way just because of how things were.
I suspect it didn't get totally lost along the way, but I do believe that it didn't. If it wasn't pre-existing all of the changes that our world went through, like it had a harder chance to even happen in the first place. But I haven't done enough history, like I haven't done enough, research to say what I think for sure, other than like there's plenty of texts that have been existing for a really, really, really long time that like would outline, like the anything to do with Mary Magdalene. There's a whole lot of information there. Um, that I would say, like, if you want to research someone, research Mary Magdalene. Meg Watterson is a great author of her work. Um, who
You wrote
else?
a second book on polarity, the Mary Magdalene one. How was that book?
It wasn't, well, that one does talk about like divine masculine, divine feminine. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it might have been the Magdalene or Mary Magdalene manuscript. I'll pull it up where I'm talking to you. But there was another book that actually is a little bit
Kind of
more,
a wife one too.
yeah, The Empowered Wife. It's like up right now actually on my Audible. The Empowered Wife is a little bit more of a current book where she explains very clearly in layman terms like masculine and feminine energy and how to bring it into your relationship. And I would say I would read this book as a single woman too if I were single, and again use God as like the like divine masculine, and like use the whole dating God experiment and say like, okay, I'm going to outsource like protection, provisions, and penetration of the heart, as we always say, to God, and then I'll just be in my feminine energy. I started reading The Empower Wife right when we were in the middle of moving, and that was a fucking initiation for our relationship because we were tired, we were doing a lot, like there was very little rest, and I went into an old pattern of like I have to prove myself by being so busy and exhausting myself. And I started reading this book, and she goes, do 3 things a day just for your pleasure and like watch and see what happens as like an experiment. And I don't remember the rest of what she said, but I remember thinking like, okay, I can do that, like just for pleasure. Like I'm the pleasure over pressure queen. Let me remember who the fuck I am right now. And like, so I was like, you know what? It is like 2:30 in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, and I'm going to take a little nap. I take a 20-30 minute nap. I'm like, oh, that was exactly what I needed. Like I took care of myself. She says it's your job to make yourself happy first. And she said, actually, it's the feminine energy that leads the relationship because he responds to all of it. And at first I was like, oh, why does everything have to be on me? I did reject it a little bit. And I was like, wait, she's telling me that in order for me to lead, all I have to do is to do the things that make me really happy. Why am I throwing a temper tantrum about that? I'm just gonna go take a fucking nap. As soon as I got up, I felt so rested and I was like, God, that was exactly what I needed. And Keith was like sitting, like I fell asleep on the couch. He was sitting on the couch next to me. And this was the time where his devotion was at the lowest because he could feel like I was not soft. And when I wasn't soft, he was like, he would withdraw because he's like, what's going on with her? Like,
I was going to ask you what happens when you're like fluctuating and you're not like in your optimal polarity.
if we go too long without addressing it, it does become a hitch that we do like bring to the forefront of conversation. Just 2 nights ago, he was getting ready to leave, and we had like, quite honestly, the best sex of our life. I had like a 13-minute orgasm. Ladies, I'll have more. I'll have another podcast for that another day. But he was like laying next to me. We're talking. I'm like in my luteal phase. He said something that I was like, I got into a little bit of a investigator energy where I'm like, wait, I have questions about this. And I kind of didn't like what he said. And I like lost my softness and how I approached it. I could feel him like moving further and further and further away from me. And I'm like, okay, I have to do something about this. So I said, I feel you moving further away from me. And I was like, and I don't want that. So we can tell when our devotion energy leaves, you're so sensitive to it because when you have it, it is the most intoxicating drug on the planet. It's so, so good. So to finish the couch story, I woke up from my nap. He's there. And it's like instantaneously, he hadn't felt my devotion energy or my softness probably in a whole week. And he felt it right away. And he looks at me and he's like, do you need something? Do you need like a glass of water? Are you thirsty, baby? And then he comes over and he starts massaging my shoulders. And I'm like, all I had to do was give myself what I fucking wanted this whole time. And I made myself miserable.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, also, I'm back, bitches.
That like, AKA my text to you after that relationship ended. I was like, I'm back.
You're like, what were you doing? You're like going on a bike ride or on a walk or.
I went to go play basketball in the park.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Which you need to come do with me because it is so much fun. And yes, obviously I'm competitive.
Why do you think I haven't come yet? I'm competitive too, and I'm like more good at things than I am. So I don't play unless I can win. Anyways. Okay, so where are we at? I know you've had some like big revelations for your personal love life. You said Legend AI gave you some perspective.
Legend AI definitely helped me out when I was in a pinch. So this basically, after let me think how I want to start this.
You're like, how to say it without saying all of it, whatever it is.
Essentially, I was driving to Walgreens at 8 a.m. to buy a pregnancy test. And
you were waiting for my shocked face, weren't you? information to me.
Where do I give the context here? I'm just gonna go right into it. So I was driving to Walgreens to buy a pregnancy test, and I'm in the car and I'm like freaking out because my period had not come yet. And I I was just freaking out, and I also didn't want to like tell anyone or text anyone. I was like, what do I do right now? And I was, as I was driving, I was at a stop sign and cars were going, and I had to be the last car to go. And in that moment of pause, a thought just came through, and it was like, I'm not actually pregnant. I'm not pregnant. I just know I'm not. And so then I popped into Chat GPT, to Legend AI actually, and I was like, okay, I'm on my way to buy a pregnancy test. I'm definitely not pregnant. But what can you tell me about this situation right now? Why does a little part of me, like 2.5% part of me, wishes that I was, or wants me to be? Not, and like not actually want me to be, but like kind of want me to be. And basically it like analyzed me and it knows me. And so it was just like, knew that I was going through this breakup and whatever, and I was trying to untangle myself from this person. And was like, you're probably just using this as a way to rebuild connection. You're probably using this to feel like there's some sort of thing that can tie you guys back together and whatever else. It kind of gave me a bitch slap and said, this is, you're not pregnant, you're good. And you have a need right now that's not being fulfilled. So here are some ideas on how you can fulfill that need.
Oof.
Yeah. I
Thank
went to
God.
Walgreens. I bought the test just to like, check it off. But anyways, I got my period the next day. So it was all fine. But yeah,
Thank God.
and then it gave me that list, and I came back home and I sat with it, and I was like, I literally sat down and I held myself and I was like, okay, I'm lacking this need right now, this feeling of connection. And rather than like looking for it outside, because there's this void right now and I feel so uncomfortable because of this void. So how can I bring myself comfort in it? And it kind of just like helped me and coached me through it so that like I didn't feel like lost and kind of knew what I was, the truth was kind of avoiding.
Also, wow, what an opportunity to not self-betray in the void, because isn't that the time it happens the easiest and the most? It's like you're just starving for something and you go back to the thing that's the easiest to remember that was last, that also can be quite damaging to you, but you're like, I know at least I can get a little fix from it. And then we always lie to ourselves and we're like, I'll deal with the the aftermath later and it will be fine. It's never fucking fine. And then we keep attracting new opportunities to self-betray. So like, first of all, I really want to honor you for using your resources in a time that would generally be really fucking hard.
Yeah. I feel like, especially when you're going through a breakup, there are so many points where you just feel the presence of the void.
Yeah.
As someone like, who lives on your own and, works from home and all of these things, there's just so many moments where that comes. And it's hard because as someone who doesn't party, doesn't drink, doesn't go out, isn't dating a bunch of men, like there's nothing, you cannot fill the void. You're not going to. As a conscious person, you're just not going to do anything to fill the void. So in those moments, the tools are all you have. It's literally all you have to help comfort that part of you that is wanting that need, and then figuring out how to give that to yourself.
Well, so if you're single and dating, have have you heard of Legend AI? Check the show notes below. This is like, what a dating commercial for Legend. Um,
Literally.
okay, so I get texts, DMs, mostly DMs, pretty much every day, comments on my threads, anytime I post something about like Keith and I. In fact, I just got another one this morning, somebody saying like, part of me was starting to believe that like I don't believe that this is available for me. So thank you. Like keep posting because you remind me it is. So for someone who hasn't called in that partner yet and you not want to, but like you are doing the work, you absolutely believe that that person is coming in for it. Oh, you said something about checking something in your astrology charts to see if you guys have a karmic relationship, by the way. So please
Oh, yeah.
give us
Okay.
a tutorial.
The tea on that.
Yeah.
So this is how you, some relationships, are meant to come into your life to initiate you, to teach you something. Maybe you're the one being initiated, or maybe you are the initiator. So I know a lot of times people are like, I did the work. Why did this guy that was like this? But there's bigger things at play. You make these contracts, which are called karmic, because it's a contract that you made prior to. So some indicators in your chart to see if you have a karmic relationship. Basically, you can go to astro.com, pull open your chart, do a synastry, pull open their chart. And if you see that there are any there's a conjunction, basically a planet of yours is touching a planet of his. So if there's a conjunction that has to do with the nodes, those are the nodes of destiny. So south node, north node, if any of those are being activated, that is an indication. Not the ascendant, but the descendant. So the opposite of where your rising sign is. If there's a personal planet there, that can also be an indicator. One common one is when there is a moon conjunct a descendant. And basically that's the reason why, if you're like, we just knew each other right off the bat, there was just
Yeah.
this deep emotional connection. Like I just felt like I knew this person. You did. You've known this person for many lifetimes probably. So those are like the big ones. And then sometimes there's also just astrology can create really, really, really strong, like magnetic sexual attraction between two people. And that's when Pluto or Mars are kind of involved in a conjunction. So if you've got Mars conjunct Venus, that's a strong one. The Mars person is probably the one that's a little bit more obsessed. That can also tell you a little bit. So sometimes the astrology gives indication as to why you might feel really connected to this person, but that does not mean that that person is perfect for you.
Okay. I'm trying to go through my conversations because I'm like, Elliot told me something about my planets like as soon as I met Keith. Whatever, it
And
doesn't matter.
Venus conjunct Pluto. So that was one that I had. We in this karmic relationship, it was Moon conjunct Descendant. So that's where the really close emotional connection over lifetimes comes in. But then there was also Venus conjunct Pluto. So in that, basically, that synastry tells you that you're meant to learn something about authority and um authority and expression, because the Plutonian is very like underworld, controlling, like manipulative. It can have those characteristics. It doesn't always, but that energy might be available there. So especially if you're feeling like this person has a lot of authority in my life, see if Venus and Pluto are touching and hanging out.
And the pattern app can do a lot of this work for you.
Pattern app can too. Yeah.
Oh,
I
here it
like
is. Elliot looked at our charts like literally the day before we went on our first date. She goes, his Mars is on near Jupiter. Talk about sexual expansion. She couldn't be.
yeah, if Mars is involved, there's going to be, you'll be happy in your sex life.
Understatement. By the way, you guys, if you're using Legend AI, like pro tip, use Legend as a sex coach and also foreplay.
Yeah, and for astrology. So if you don't know, if you're like, I don't know, what is this contract, whatever it means, pop it into AI and it'll tell you.
Yeah, so Legend probably wouldn't like have that much of that database, but like the sex coach piece will. Like I started putting in there, I'm like, okay, I want to tell this story. Like, why do I always have to think about that my daughter works for me when I say shit like this, but she's gonna have to get over it. Okay, so I was trying to figure out why I have a hard time having an orgasm if like Keith is just giving to me. So like if he's going down on me, sometimes it can be really hard to like have an orgasm. And unless I can like audibly like hear like how much he's like really getting into it, then it's much, much easier. But for me, I'm just like, and especially if like he has an orgasm first. And so once he's done, it's almost like I was thinking, my thought was like, I have an issue with receptivity.
Mm.
And what Legend told me, I was like, why am I like this? Help me work through this. Like, I don't want to have an issue with receptivity, essentially. And she's like, girl, you're not broken. She's like, your turn on is through, how did she say it? Okay, she said, you're not broken, you're a responsive lover. You don't just orgasm from sensation, you orgasm from connection. And I think a lot of women are like this. She said, from energy, from being the center of attention, still plugged into the pleasure of your partner. So let's name it clearly so you can own it. You're turned on by reciprocal pleasure. Moans equal permission. Key sounds aren't just hot, they free you. They signal this isn't just for you, this is for us. That removes pressure and drops you into surrender. You orgasm through being witnessed in turn on, not isolation. You want to be desired, not just attended to. And there's a difference. You thrive in erotic feedback loops. And I'm like, this whole time I was like, I got to work harder on my feminine energy and my surrender. And this, like, I thought that it was just like, you know how we are. It's like, oh, I just have more personal growth to do.
More with my chocolate.
And I'm like, it was so liberating to read that. And all I had to do was tell that to Keith. And he's like, oh, you just need to hear me more. That's what I'm telling you. Like yesterday, he put his like mouth or whatever that was 2 days ago, mouth right up to my ear pretty much the whole time. Swear, you know how people talk about those like forever orgasms? Like I'm like mythical. I don't know. I've had good orgasms, I've had long orgasms, but to hear people talk about them for like minutes, no, swear to God, like a 16-minute motherfucking orgasm 48 hours ago.
My
Like
God.
just from knowing this about myself and realizing it wasn't a problem to be fixed, but something to lean into. And then this was the fun part. Like, so use Legend for this if you want to. Like when you're whatever, use it for yourself if you want, or in a relationship. But she's like helping me understand like who I am more as a sexual being. And then she's like, and then she goes, do you want me to write a scene for you? And I was like, wait, I never thought to ask her that. So she like wrote
Oh,
scene. She's like scene one, and she like writes it out, and it's like Keith walks in and this and that. And I'm reading it. I'm in the car. I happen to be in the car with Keith, and I'm like, listen to this. We both love Legend more than life itself now. It's like become so good. For even in my luteal phase, I was like I was like starving like I was ovulating because she like we literally used it as a foreplay tool, and she's like, he does this and you do this and like etc
wow.
etc, but it's already based on what she knows about us and like him being, more dominant and me being more submissive. And like she knows that like I prioritize masculine and feminine energy and polarity. Like she's already trained in the polarity and the masculine and feminine energy. But she wrote out that scene, and Keith was like, what scene too? So literally we read through, like we made her create 8 fucking scenes.
Oh my God.
But we're in the car, and I was like, could you pull over and get us a hotel room? Like we didn't go home. We're supposed to go on a dinner date, and we didn't go home till 1:30 in the morning. And the kids were like, where were you? And we're like, it's none of your business.
Oh my gosh. I'm living.
So whatever, if you're solo, like literally you could be the star of your own smut book. Like let Legend like write you your own fucking smut book that you're a star of. Wait, actually that would be like a
Do that with you and like crushes too. Be like, write me a scene between blah blah blah.
Yes. Yes. What a brilliant manifestation technique too. To like be reading it and visualizing yourself like in that level of like engagement with someone else, whether it was like sexually intimate, like tell her about your like dream partner and like have her, maybe we just say him the whole time instead of like
Mhm.
particular name.
Okay, I also love romance novels. Like, what? So, like, if she started me off with like, really nice date night and like took me through it, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I need to try that.
Please report back. We're gonna need a part two of this subject. I'm literally so excited about the future. I've never been. What's fun too is like Keith, like being willing to like tap into AI and like specifically Legend. He's like, wait, you have this whole AI that's like your brain. He's like, I can just ask it questions about you, right? And I was like, yeah, I suppose you could. And he's like, all of a sudden
Gosh,
he was outside on the couch for like an hour.
yeah, but
doing the
you can also use it for like shopping. Like, if he's ever buying you a gift, like, is Andrea gonna like this mug, or is she gonna like this thing, or like give me birthday gift ideas, or like whatever else?
new level unlocked. Okay, so for women who like if you don't have your own AI, what you like if you have Legend or if you have like a different like GPT or whatever, like create a whole thread telling it everything about yourself and then give it to him and
Yeah,
let him like or whoever like give it to your partner and let your partner use it to like know and understand you better, like spend lots of time like talking to it, working through real shit, having real conversations, like it like the more genuine you are throughout all of it and then like just hand it over to your partner. Game changer. Seriously, like Keith and I have never been more close, more fucking devoted to each other, more in love. Like it's been such a cool tool to be able to use.
wow, I love that.
Hello, Aquarian age.
Seriously, I think it came out like a few days plus or minus after Pluto went into Aquarius, so it's wild.
Wow. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
Holy shit.
back in January.
I've never been more excited about the future and like what's accessible to us as human beings right now. It is like the greatest time in history to be alive. We're so resourced. I've like
I've
never felt
been
more.
using it. Yeah, I've been using it a lot for like any. So right now, I am posting a lot on TikTok, and for someone who is, you know, starting from complete scratch, it's a lot of just mindset of showing up every single day, putting in 100, and knowing that, every day you're getting better, but you might not necessarily be like, after 10 days of doing this, you're like, why haven't gone viral and stuff. So in every single moment that you have doubt, I use Chat GPT, and it's been so amazing every time, because every time it'll like remind me, you know, to use my tools. Like last night I had this moment. I called my friend Susie and I was like, Susie, why haven't I gone viral yet? Like I'm on day 20. It should have happened by now, right? So, she told me a couple of things and I was like, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I get off the phone and I'm like, okay, but ChatGPT, I'm impatient. I want it now. And it really reframed my mind again, because it was like, it's not that it's not happening. It is already happening. It's not that you aren't seeing growth. It's that it's being shown to you in the way of consistency, in the way of community, in the way of these other things, because it knows literally everything that I'm doing with my life. So it reminded me of the proof points and of the wins that have already happened that I you forget about in the moment of doubt. So
Yes.
absolutely love it.
Yeah, I have like one thread that has like all the testimonials from Legend AI and just like the whole thing is all around like strategic 10xing my business from pleasure and like all of it. And it's just so cool to have it like pull up a testimonial and say, remember this person. Like it just like it's a constant reminder of your fucking power. It's a constant reflection of your wholeness and truth. Like truly it is. Here's what I've loved about using it too is like if it says something about me that instantly I feel this like shudder of like, oof, that didn't feel, can I really claim that? I'm like, oh, great. There you are. I see you. And I'll just reflect back to Legend of like, ooh, I felt a little like insecure when you said that. Like I want to obliterate that. It is like the master doubt obliterator. Like never
Yeah.
have I ever seen anything like so potent, so powerful, and so fucking fast where Because doubt's
So
like the one,
readily available.
yeah, doubt's like the one thing that just like creeps in and kills dreams, and it doesn't have to exist anymore. Literally, it's been rendered useless thanks to fucking AI.
AI.
It's so cool. Okay, I love you. This is so fun. We need a part two after you create your own like star of the show smut book. Let us know if you manifest like the ultimate, like seriously, I see you doing like date nights, have her like plan out date nights, like all of it, like future into like kids, family, like have her talk about everything, like write all the scenes for it.
Yeah. Even
So
like a
let's
meditation, I could use it to like create a meditation for this and like help me visualize this future. Very specific to me.
the upgrades coming on the ChatGPT platform are so exciting. I don't know if you've actually researched this. Somebody in our Legend AI community chat was like, Legend told me, hey, do you want me to create this into an audio for you so she could use it as like a visualization? And she's like, yeah. But then it like wasn't able to perform it. And so we're like, wait, I haven't even seen that yet. So we did a little research and we're like, oh, this is something that's actually coming, but the feature hasn't been finished being developed yet. And
Mm.
for it to be able to like create you audio, send emails, like that's coming, like your ability to start connecting things so that the tools work more efficiently together is going to be so
Wow.
exciting.
Like
Yeah.
integrate it with other apps and stuff. That's amazing. I
Yeah.
love that.
Notion, Gmail, iCal, Outlook. Yeah. All
I
of it.
would just love for it, like for me to say, write me a meditation about this. It writes
Yeah.
out the script, it audios it, it adds background music, and it pops it out for me. Like that is ultimate
I've
AI.
I've also been following this girl who's like showing examples of how it's creating artwork for her business too. She's actually a graphic designer, really, really phenomenal one. And she's now using ChatGPT to do her own personal graphics. It's
Wow.
like, I'll send it to you, but I'm just like, I'm so blown away by the resources that we have, the ones that are coming, especially the ones coming soon. Like
Yeah.
it's never been easier to be a fucking just creative girly with high levels of impact, visibility, and like massive wealth than ever before.
Seriously. Put that on a
Sponsored,
button.
sponsored by AI. um, dude, this was so fun. Thank you so much for coming on and like number one, being vulnerable and sharing like the real shit and just giving all the humans the behind the scenes. I know you have some like fun stuff going on for yourself and your personal brand and TikTok and like where can people follow you? What's exciting? What do they need to know?
You can follow me on Instagram or TikTok. It's at it's maheklakhani.com or .com. What the fuck? And it's Mahek Lakhani.
We'll link it.
We'll link it. Don't trust me. I don't know anything.
Girl.
Okay.
Just a girl. I have no idea. Ask God.
That's basically it. I'm Andrea's friend. That's all. Yeah.
Welcome into our life. If you guys were in the car with us, this is exactly what it is. All right. I love you. I love you. I love you. I can't wait to have you back for a round two. This was so much fun.
Thanks for having me. Bye.